in the Northern Territories was a thick, suffocating curtain that smelled of pine, ancient iron, and the sharp, metallic tang of an approaching storm. For Ben Rodriguez, the rain was the only thing that felt real anymore. He was the Silver Alpha, a man born with the weight of 1,000-year bloodline resting on his shoulders, a lineage of kings who had carved Moon City out of the raw wilderness. But that weight had finally begun to crush him. He sat in the back of his sleek, black sedan, the leather seats cold against his skin, while a bottle of amber-colored Wolfbane gin rested in the cup holder. A liquid poison that promised to silence the constant, judging howls of his ancestors that echoed in his skull. He had just come from the royal gala, where he was expected to lead the ritual of the first howl, a sacred ceremony meant to bless the new season's hunt. Instead, he had stumbled on the marble steps, his eyes glazed with the fog of addiction, his scent a chaotic mess of fermented grain and failure. He had seen the look in the elder's eyes, a lethal mixture of pity and disgust. He was a king who had traded his crown for a bottle, an alpha who could no longer hold his own territory, let alone a pack. Drive, he growled at the driver, his voice a jagged shard of glass. Anywhere but the palace. I can't breathe in there. The car wound through the mud-slicked roads of the outer slums, far from the neon-lit high-rises of the elite districts. Ben watched the blurred lights until a flickering sign for a low-rent pack bar caught his eye. The Crescent. It was a place for strays, omegas, and those who wanted to be forgotten. He stumbled out into the mud, his heavy leather jacket soaking up the rain. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of unwashed fur, cheap tobacco, and the heavy vibration of a low-class gambling den. He made his way to a dark corner, pulling his hood over his silver hair, wanting to be invisible. But then the air in the room changed. The atoms seemed to align. A sound cut through the noise of clinking glasses and rowdy laughter. It was a voice that sounded like moonlight hitting deep, dark water. On a small, rickety stage stood Bianca Stephanny. She didn't have the polished, artificial look of the city wolves. Her hair was a wild, dark nest of curls, and her dress was faded and torn at the hem. But she stood with a poise that made Ben's inner wolf, usually curled in a drunken, pathetic sleep, suddenly stand up and bared its teeth. She wasn't just singing. She was conducting the very spirit of the room. Ben realized in a heartbeat what she was. She was a hidden saintess of the lost melody. For centuries, the saintesses had been the spiritual backbone of the wolfverse, women who could command the weather and heal the soul with a single note. They were thought to have been hunted to extinction during the great purge of the lunar sect. But here she was, in a dive bar, singing the lament of the wandering star for scraps and copper coins. When she finished, Ben didn't clap. He couldn't move. He waited for her in the shadows behind the stage, his massive, broad-shouldered frame blocking the narrow exit. "Who taught you to vibrate the air like that, Bianca?" he demanded, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that made the puddles at his feet ripple with power. Bianca jumped, her amber eyes widening as she recognized him, the Silver Alpha, the man whose face was plastered on every screen in the territories. No one. It's just what comes out when the silence gets too loud. You are a saintess, Bianca. You're singing the songs of the first pack, and you're doing it for wolves who can't even hear the rhythm. It's a sin to let that gift rot in a place like this. I have to survive, Mr. Rodriguez, she said, her voice trembling, but her gaze defiant. My father was an Omega who died in the mines. I have no pack, no protection. This bar is the only place that doesn't ask for my lineage papers. From tonight, you are under my protection, Ben said, reaching out to touch a stray curl near her ear. The moment his skin brushed hers, a spark of the fated bond ignited. It was like a bolt of white-hot lightning through his veins, momentarily clearing the fog of the djinn. I'm going to show the world what you are, and in return, you're going to give me a reason to stay sober. The next 6 months were a blur of intense training and rising, forbidden desire. Ben took her to the Temple of the Echoes, an ancient site where the walls were carved from lunar crystal to amplify the soul. He spent hours teaching her the ritual of the vocal hunt, showing her how to channel her pheromones into her lungs so her voice could paralyze a predator or soothe a grieving pack. Close your eyes, he whispered one night, standing directly behind her, his hands resting on her narrow waist. The heat from his palms seeped through her clothes, making her breath catch. Don't sing for the critics. Don't sing for the gold. Sing for the moon. She is the only one who deserves your truth. As the training progressed, they performed the ritual of the blood moon echo. Ben had to shift into his massive silver wolf form, while Bianca sang a melody that synchronized with his heartbeat. It was an intimate, dangerous dance of sound and instinct. During the ritual, their scents mingled, his of cedar and rain, hers of jasmine and moonlight, creating a bond that was stronger than any legal contract. Why do you help me, Ben? Bianca asked after the ritual, leaning her head against his furry chest. You were a king. You didn't need a stray like me. Ben shifted back into his human form, his golden eyes burning with a hunger that had nothing to do with blood. Because when you sing, the voices in my head go quiet. You're the only peace I've ever known, Bianca. You are my ashiqui, my ultimate soul debt. He kissed her then, a slow, deep claim that tasted of desperation and hope. It was the ritual of the first scent, a bond that meant their souls were now entwined. If one fell, the other would feel the ground. As Bianca's fame exploded, she became the voice of the goddess. Every pack in the world wanted her to bless their cubs and lead their hunts. She was no longer a stray. She was the saintess of the new era. But as she ascended, Ben's old demons returned. The press, jealous of his power, began to call him the Saintess's leash. They wrote that he was a washed-up alpha living off the glory of a girl he found in a gutter. The insult stung, but it was the ritual of the full moon that broke him. during a high-stakes ceremony where Bianca was supposed to lead the pack in the procession of the Silent Paws. Ben arrived, so intoxicated he couldn't even maintain his human form. He fell onto the stage in front of the High Alpha, his silver fur half-formed and mangy, his dignity stripped. Bianca had to stop her sacred song to cover him with her own silk cloak, her face burning with a shame that felt like physical fire. "I can't be the man you need," Ben told her later that night in their mountain cabin, his voice broken. "Every time you fly, I'm the stone around your neck. I'm an alpha who can't even hold his own howl. I don't care about the pack. I don't care about the crown." Bianca screamed, her voice cracking, a sound that hurt worse than a physical wound. "I love the man who found me in the rain. I love the Ben who believed in me when I was nothing. But that Ben is dead, Bianca. The djinn killed him. And if I stay, I'll take you down into the dark with me." He made his final decision during the festival of the eternal moon. He told Bianca he would be in the front row, watching her perform the hymn of the silver moon, the most difficult song a Saintess could ever attempt. He promised her that once the song was over, they would leave the city and start a new life in the wild. But as Bianca stepped onto the stage, her voice filling the stadium with a divine light, Ben was miles away. He stood at the Cliff of Whispers, the place where rejected wolves went to give their lives back to the earth. He performed the final shift, a ritual where a wolf releases its spirit to the moon to protect its mate from afar. "I am the sacrifice," he whispered, looking up at the moon. "Let my blood pay for her throne. Let her name be the only one they remember." He shifted into his silver wolf one last time. He gave a howl so loud and so full of love that it was heard in the stadium, weaving perfectly into Bianca's song. Then he leapt into the abyss. The bond snapped. Bianca felt the coldness hit her chest like a spear. She collapsed on stage, her song turning into a high-pitched, supernatural scream that shattered the glass chandeliers of the arena. She spent the next few months in the ritual of the morning silence, refusing to speak or sing. The elders tried to replace Ben, offering her the strongest alphas in the world. They told her she was a saintess and needed a king to stabilize her power. "I already have a king," she told them, her eyes turning from amber to a permanent, regal gold. On the anniversary of his death, she returned to the Royal Opera House. It was the biggest event in the history of Moon City. The High Alpha himself was there to sign her into the Eternal Pack, presenting the Saintess of the North, Bianca Stephanny. The announcer boomed. Bianca walked to the center of the stage. She didn't look at the contract. She picked up the pen and looked at the moon through the glass ceiling. "My name is not Stephanny," she said, her voice echoing with the power of 1,000 ancestors. "I am the mate of the Silver Alpha, and I carry his mark until the end of time." She signed the contract with a bold, defiant hand. Bianca Rodriguez. as she began the opening notes of the Saintess's lost melody. A low, phantom howl wound through the stadium. The scent of cedar and rain filled the room. Ben was gone, but through her name and her voice, the silver alpha was finally, eternally